This is the Ramana Maharshi Self-Knowledge Satsang. Self-knowledge is what brings self-realization, the deep experiential knowledge of your own existence here and now. This is a time for self-reflection and self-inquiry. Know yourself and always be free and at peace. I'm Richard Clarke, hosting this satsang. I have followed Ramana Maharshi for 30 years. I took satsang for years from one of the finest teachers of Ramana, Nome of Sat in Santa Cruz, California. I am a seeker like you, sharing what we love. I have been blessed with years of deep teaching. In this satsang, I share this with you. This series is a paragraph by paragraph review of Ramana's seminal book, Who Am I? The all-text version, which was edited by Ramana himself. Now to continue the review, we are on paragraph 17 and Ramana's words. For the subsidence of mind, there is no other means more effective and adequate than self-inquiry. Even though by other means the mind subsides, it is only apparently so. It will rise again. Now Ramana starts instruction on the practice of self-inquiry. This will continue for several paragraphs and several more of these satsangs. The first issue is addressed is subsidence of mind. Subsidence means sinking. It's when the mind gets quiet. It's only when the mind is quiet that you can start to see that there is something beyond the mind. And even your most subtle thoughts and feelings are objective. They are known. By whom are they known? This question points you directly to the self, the being consciousness that is your very existence. It's a common goal of many spiritual practices to still the mind. For example, Buddha once said, "Stop, stop, do not talk. The highest truth is not even to think." In self-inquiry practice, the still mind is just a starting point, like the launching point for deeper practice. When the mind is still, who knows the still mind? You know the mind. There continues to be consciousness being. When thoughts are still, you continue to exist. So you cannot be a thought. When you can look deeply, you see that the idea of ego, of individuality, of being a separate person is just another thought, another idea. You know this ego Otherwise, it has no power. The experience within, beneath the ego, so to say, is of only one. So how to best get subsidence of mind? Here, Ramana is specific. He says, quote, there is no other means more effective and adequate than self-inquiry. In self-inquiry, the seeker uses the minds and the capabilities of the mind to look past the mind into being, consciousness, bliss, which is the actual source of the mind. In this inquiry, you see that your identity, your being, the spiritual heart, who you are, is not anything that is objective. All that is known. Even the subtle experience like thought is objective. It is known. Who knows? The seeker continues to direct the mind within to being, to what is always there. The inquiry opens the mind with a question. Your own being is the answer. This is direct, immediate experience, not an object perceived by a subject. It is where subject and object are one and the same. It is non-duality. It is who you are, who you always are. Other forms of meditation stop the mind while you're practicing, but the mind's habits resume as meditation, as in interrupted, like in a dream or deep sleep, or meditation ends. Self-inquiry can burn up the mind altogether. To know finally that the so-called mind does not really exist. It never was real to begin with. When you find the mind is not real, it no longer has any hold over you. With this comes freedom. Now some practice notes, things for you to think about, reflect, and meditate on. You have had countless thoughts. Who knows these thoughts? Which thought are you? Can you be any thought? Are you all of them? If you're not any thought, then just who are you anyway? You may notice breaks when the ego is not active. If there is even one moment when you exist and the ego does not, can you be the ego? Now to our videos for the week. The first is from Swami Sarvapriyananda. This dynamic Swami is head of the New York Vedanta Society, and here his talk is titled No Mind. This is just an excerpt from a longer talk.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityurma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. The most beautiful things I've heard comes from a monk in the Himalayas who said, I'll tell you in Hindi and then translate into English. Shant man mein bhala sansar kaun dekha hai? Whoever has seen samsara in a peaceful mind. What is the great thing about this? Normally we think just the opposite. My mind is restless because samsara makes me restless. This monk says, you have samsara because your mind is restless. If your mind were peaceful, in the same situation, a person with peaceful mind will experience at least less suffering. Not that everything will go away, but suffering will definitely be less. Good deal of our suffering is our own contribution of our own minds. Again, I'm going a little off track, but it's worth mentioning here. A few years back, I attended a medical conference, not as a doctor, but I was invited to speak. The conference was on pain, and management of pain. And one of the sessions was talk therapies, so counseling for pain management. And there were different people giving talks, counselors, doctors, patients suffering from chronic pain, so on. One of the doctors said something very interesting. He said, I'll let you into a dirty secret of the pharmaceutical industry. The painkillers, he said, some multi-billion-dollar worldwide industry, painkillers. He says the effectiveness is less than 50%. Less than half of the drugs have any effect at all. Some of it might be placebo effect, and less than half of it is, and there are a lot of side effects. That is there. Side effects are guaranteed. And then he drew 3 circles. Pain. Big circle, this is for chronic pain, continuously people who have different kinds of back pain, things like that. So big circle, inner circle, and the smaller circle inside. He said, the smaller circle is the actual physical pain felt. And the bigger circle is the circle around it is the expectation of pain. Oh, it's going to hurt again, it's going to hurt again, it's going to be uneasy. The mental uneasiness and misery coming out of the pain, that is the bigger circle. That accounts for more of the total suffering than the actual physical pain. And the much bigger circle again around it are all the associated social problems that I cannot go such and such place because I will have this pain, things like that. Many other things which are felt to be disabilities. So a good deal, he says, about 70 to 80% of our discomfort and suffering is contributed by our own minds. Only 20 to 30% is the actual physical pain. And the medicines, if they could work, they could only reduce that actual physical pain. They will not address the thinking of our minds. And even there also medicines don't work half the time. So anyway, back to the thing that our minds, samsara, a good deal of samsara is in the mind. If the mind can be made into no mind, the yogi's solution is chitta vritti nirodha. Calm down the mind. When the mind is absolutely still, no samsara. So they call it samadhi. And they have 8 steps. In Patanjali Yoga Sutra, you will see yama and niyama, the moral disciplines. Then how to sit steady. If you want to make the mind steady, the body must be steady. People are so restless. I met this young student a couple of years back, brilliant, going to one of the Ivy League universities, and his parents introduced him. Very nice young man. But what I saw, he couldn't sit still. Even while standing and talking to me, he was jumping around. Steady. The mind has been compared to, you have a bowl with water in it. If you shake the bowl ever so little, the water will splash out. So imagine how steady you have to keep the bowl. Our bodies are always trembling and moving. One Olympic, the rifle shooting, he had written an article. He said we are not generally aware of how much our bodies are moving. It's only when you have to keep your body very, very still for the target shooting. Because a little trembling of the hand also can throw the bullet off several feet at the end of the target. So they have to be very still. And it's interesting to note that at the moment of releasing the bullet, they have to hold their breath. So pranayama. Yes, literally, they have to control the breathing. Now, asana, first how to sit steady, then pranayama, how to control the breath. Why breath? Because it steadies the body and the mind. The breath is the link between, it's a subtle link between body and mind, the breath. So control of the breath, then pratyahara, withdrawing the senses from the world outside, from their engagement in the world outside. Then dharana, dhyana, samadhi, deeper and deeper focus. First there is savikalpa samadhi, or in yoga system, sampragyata samadhi. And then finally, nirvikalpa samadhi or asampragyata samadhi, when the mind is absolutely still. What do you get out of it? When the mind is absolutely still, they say, you see the witness, the real self beyond the mind becomes clear. So that's the yogi's approach. Shut down the mind. That's the yogi's approach. Gaudapada does not agree. No mind is not thinking. No mind is not shutting down the mind. No mind is not being inactive. What is no mind then? Amani bhava, no mind, basically means managing the mind, spiritualizing the mind. This is the central question of spiritual life. Whether you are a devotee, whether you are on the path of knowledge, whether you are a Buddhist, whether you are a meditator, whatever it is, ultimately, whatever the philosophy, it comes down, the practical thing comes down to handling the mind. Therefore, you will see this question, what we are talking about today, no mind. This question was actually asked to Sri Ramakrishna by Master Mahashaya, M. We don't think about it that way because the Gospel of Ramakrishna is written in such a simple language. But the tremendous depth in that, I'll tell you what the M asked. The very first question that M asked in his second visit. The first visit, there was no chance of deep discussion. The first real discussion that M had with Sri Ramakrishna, and the very first question he asked, which shows the caliber of the mind. Our questions show a caliber of our own minds. I heard about a university where the examinations are, not that the questions are asked and you have to answer the questions. Rather, you are asked to formulate the best possible question you can. And you're graded on the toughest questions that you can formulate. And the students say it's actually much harder to formulate a difficult problem than to solve a problem. So M, he asked the question, he asks two questions. And I think they are the fundamental questions of spiritual life. The first question is what we are dealing with today, no mind. You know what he asks Sri Ramakrishna? He says in Bengali, Ishware mon ki kore hai? How can I fix my mind on God? Why is that simple question? But why is that question so deep? Because if he asks, how can I attain liberation? How can I find God? Sri Ramakrishna is going to tell him, think about God all the time. Now that's easier said than done. The real question is, how do I think about God all the time? How do I fix my mind on God? He'll say, love God. Sri Ramakrishna's often was said, Vakulata holei habe. If you have intense desire for God, if intense longing for God, you will realize God, you will become enlightened. But then the question really is, how do I get intense longing for God? That's the question. So M is so intelligent, sensitive. He asks that question first. Not how I will realize God. How can I fix my mind on God? He asked that question. That's the first question. Sri Ramakrishna's answer, 3 sentences. He covers the entire range of spiritual practice. Simple sentences. He says, sing the glories of God, take the names of God. Ishware naam gun gan korbe. Bhakti yoga, the path of bhakti. In one sentence. Then he says, Dhyan korbe mone bone kone. Meditate. Meditate how? Where? Meditate in your mind, meditate in a corner, meditate in the forest. Why? Which he means in a secluded location. You can't get you can get Central Park here, of course, but not very good for meditation. I tried it. It's actually easier to meditate in this hall here than in Central Park. There's something about the tanmatra, the underlying vibration there, though it's very beautiful. So meditate in the forest, meditate in or a secluded place or ashram, wherever in the mountains, and meditate in the mind. Meditate in a corner of your house, wherever you are. Basically, Raja Yoga, the path of meditation. He indicated it. And the third one is what interests us, what would make Gaudapada perk up his ears. He says, always do viveka, the philosophical, spiritual discrimination, viveka. We'll talk about this later on. Always do viveka between the eternal and the non-eternal. And what you find to be non-eternal, temporary and transient, have vairagya for it. Dispassion for it. Follow the eternal, give up the non-eternal. So 3 sentences. Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga. You see the essence, he has indicated. And in such simple language, in most ordinary Bengali, you'll think that I knew that. It is nothing very great about it. But he has given you just hold on to that, you will realize God. That's just enough. Exactly what M asked, that is the answer he has given. What is no mind? The yogi says no mind is samadhi, shutting down the mind. What does Gaudapada say? The next verse. The verse I just quoted was 3.31, 3rd chapter, 31st verse. Now 3rd chapter, 32nd verse. Next verse tells us what is Gaudapada's advice about no mind. Atma satyanubodhena na sankalpayate yada amanastam tadayati grahya bhave tadagraham. What does it mean? When you realize yourself, the Atman, as existence, consciousness, bliss, as Brahman, then the mind, there will be no more desiring, reaching out, grasping in the mind anymore. When the mind finds nothing out there to grasp, then it becomes a non-grasping mind, agraham. That is no mind. Then the mind becomes no mind. What?
Sorry for the break there, he goes on. Now we will continue with Mooji and discover your true self.
Check in a little bit inside, internally. If I say that you are, don't be a container storing things. Don't be a room. Be like open terrain, open space. There's nothing to collect. The sky is not collecting clouds. Ocean is not collecting waves. Let them play. Let everything play. Who are you? This must be clear. That's the only thing that needs to be really clear, you see. Are you an object? Are you a thing? Are you a form? You are perceiving the senses, mind, the play of intellect. All this is being perceived. But can the perceiver be perceived? These are questions for your mind. Can that which is observing the function of perception, can that be perceived? Is it an object? Where must you go for answer to this? If you don't cling to any shape for a moment, what is your size? Don't take the shape of any concept at all. What astrological sign are you? What's your date of birth? What gender are you? And yet, not that these things are in any problem at all, but they are more superficial to something that no one catches. Whatever is perceivable, you are already here. If you hold on to the form, then you'll pick up the limitations of that form. And this natural conviction, this natural knowing, it will feel like some abstract knowledge. Why say, don't cling to any form? Does it hurt you? You do this now, like this. What is here? If everything was taken, if everything that you associate with yourself was removed for a moment, even just for a few minutes, everything, anything you can think of, imagine from any zone of time, was wiped aside like this. Can anyone remove the awareness? Can you be lost? Is there a separation from what and what? And is just merely a game of imagining? So like this I say, in order to come to the quintessence of your own being, thereafter, after this, then you may invite the world back. You may invite the whole world back and you see if it causes any trouble for you. Because everything are clouds passing. Even this body is a cloud passing. No, there's nothing wrong with clouds. And enjoy. Some will pass very slowly, others fast. But the important thing is that all of them, fast or slow, are recognized or witnessable by you. Even our desires, which are so, we are so attached often to some projection, some desire, is also cloud passing. Does it hurt to hear that? unexpectedly, knowing this, one moves very beautifully in life. Unexpectedly, love is present, and joy and peace, which are hidden by the personal standpoint of personhood. Because the person always wants something, always lacking something, always needing something. And being somehow too deeply treasured, you miss your beauty. Peace is your beauty. Love is your beauty. It is your environment, your atmosphere, your climate, your perfume, joy, lightness, spontaneity, openness, compassion, fun. This is your perfume. Largely hidden by this limited obsession with personhood. What will you really lose? Except trouble. And so life gives you, God gives you, yes, you may do this slowly so that you grow into trust and faith, and that your recognition is not forced upon you. Sometimes little force is necessary. Because sometimes we have a donkey ego, stubborn. So life has to kick you a little bit. And then after, you go to pick up a stone and then immediately, thank you. You recognize that you have tasted, as you say, acid grace. You see? Because the ego wants freedom on its own terms, and it never gets it. Check inside. Are you empty or full? Or indescribable? There was never a time when you, as pure awareness, were not. Nor will there ever be. But the person keeps changing even in one lifetime. Your shape you cannot keep. In daily life, we will encounter some things you must negotiate, must use your power of discernment, of discrimination. All these things must be active in the dynamic expression of consciousness. And that is fine. But it is most fine when you have come to this place I'm pointing. And you can acknowledge, did you create this? This vastness, this timelessness. See? It can only be discovered, it cannot be improved. All work to try and improve is to be done upon the person and the mind, and not upon awareness. Now, it's a lot to say. If you're not holding on to any shape or any intention, just now, or to any form or any desire for now, just leaving them aside, not aggressively. So whatever you can perceive or imagine, don't pick up. Whatever the mind is showing on the screen of consciousness, don't log in. Simply you perceive. What is here, you see? Does it have any form or shape? Is it going somewhere? That which is, when you leave aside all concepts for the moment, no? What remain? Did anybody put it there? No. Is it a journey? I know in some people, the mind is a tsunami. If you feel somehow experiencing that in your head it's just like a tsunami is going, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And that also will pass. And it will be weakness to pass. And if it is witnessable that it will pass, then it cannot be you. It's just looking for attention. The mind is just seeking attention. Make no effort now. What is here by itself? Does it even have a name, you see? Is it an object of creation? Can it fade? Is it an experience? When you can confirm these things, you will not have to work for peace. You will not have to create or do any exercise to find love or joy. Spontaneously it will come. Spontaneously it will manifest. All that is beautiful and pure of consciousness is already in you. But as long as we remain fascinated with the ego, identity and personhood, it will appear that these don't exist. And we are working for small wages. Now, I don't want to say anything anymore now. Let whatever you have heard that resonates in your heart marinate in that. Be grateful to the recognition of your own silence, your own self. Not personally, not person, it's not a person. It is the Lord of the universe, manifesting in each heart.
And finally, we will have a talk from Nome. Nome was my teacher for many years. Like Ramana, he had a spontaneous awakening in his teens. Meditate along with him to experience what he's talking about. Experience it. Don't just think about it. His talk is on inquiry.
What is your being when, abandoning any misidentification with the body, you do not give rise to the false assumption of individuality? The Vedas declare that this very self is Brahman. I am Atma Brahman. This self is Brahman. Qualityless, attributeless, limitless, formless, inconceivable, beginningless and endless. Of the nature of being, consciousness, bliss. Unborn and imperishable. Not to be conceived in any manner. Never perceived, yet all that is perceived. Absolutely one, without anything second to it whatsoever. And in similar ways is it described. To realize it conclusively is to be awake to truth. It is the knowledge of reality in which reality comprehends itself. This is the significance of self-knowledge. If you inquire, as the Maharshi has instructed, deeply within, who am I? what has just been indicated about your being will be self-evident. Abandon the misidentification with the body and similar false definitions, and inquire, who am I?
And now we will meditate for a little bit. Take a comfortable position and close your eyes. And take a couple of deep breaths. And notice that you exist. You exist, and you know you exist without thinking of it or sensing it. This knowledge is deeper than thought or the senses. Then inquire, investigate within yourself. When I am not thinking, who am I then? When you're not thinking, you still exist. Who exists? What exists? Who knows the seeming individual, the ego? Does the ego know itself? Or do you know the ego? The ego is not continuous. It goes away in deep sleep, for example. But you don't go away. If you're not the mind, not a thought, not the ego, then who am I? All right. Now let's close with a short chant. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. If this satsang was of interest to you, I have more for you. A free book site, a YouTube site, and my blog. The URLs will be on screen next. These satsangs will continue in the coming weeks with stories based on the Ramana Maharshi book, Who Am I? Thank you for letting me share this teaching with you.